context of civic engagement. I do think that it's a very important distinction between the two, in that in order to engage in civic life in this country, you really do need to have an understanding of what our institutions are, what these sort of underlying democratic principles are that are the basis for that engagement. I think it's sort of like you need to know the rules of the road, you need to know the rules of the game in order to play, and that's sort of what we're getting at.
When I read this document, I was excited because civic engagement in schools is so important. And I think, back in the day, schools were all about the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we've come a long way. As an educator, in schools that I've worked at, and especially with the lens of vocational education, I think about subscribing to the 4 R's, about rigor, the importance of a strong curriculum in the classroom, the relevancy, especially for the lens of vocational school, having the applied learning to make those connections between theory and practice, relationships, making sure that we're working with business and hiring partners to really make sure that the students' learning is relevant, and when they graduate, they will be career and college ready. And I added the 4th R about responsibility, giving back to the community, and certainly in a vocational setting, there's so many different types of civic learning opportunities that exist in the curriculum based on a number of community service projects that many of the students are out participating in, refurbishing houses, working for Habitat for Humanity, working directly with public sector to help improve their agencies, their buildings, and so forth. So I certainly applaud the opportunity to focus on this.
My compliments to the committee and to both commissioners for bringing us to this level. I didn't see anything when I read it. When I read the document, I didn't see anything that I didn't like. The only thing I wondered is if we went far enough in a couple of areas. I think that when we talk about readiness, preparing students to be ready for 21st century citizenship, then that has global implications. And I didn't really, in the context of civic engagement, I didn't see much that really kind of pointed to civic engagement as it relates to the worldly civic engagement. So maybe it's embedded anyhow. And then the other point that I kind of focused on is do you feel that that the framework sufficiently speaks to stewardship? So it's not just engagement as it relates to participatory behavior in the political realm or whatever dynamic associated with community and municipality, but is there anything that kind of encourages and pushes towards a stewardship mindset where we have students become adults who care about the environment and have a sense of stewardship around protecting it and making sure that we honor it and treat it right, and the sense of charity, which is again connected to stewardship. So mixing a couple of things in my comments there. And then lastly, going back to the worldly concept of civic engagement. We look a lot different in this country than we did 20 years ago. And so the diversity is very pervasive. And so does this framework allow for the promotion of developing a capacity for being proficient in cultural competency understandings that will enhance the civic engagement and the civility that we expect our young people to have when they get it done? So I know I threw a lot in the pot there, but I was just curious if you feel that any of that is taken care of when that is mentioned.
not to put you on the spot, but maybe give us a little background in the process that got us to this focus as opposed to some others.
I appreciate those questions. And the work that we have done collaboratively between staff from the Department of Higher Ed and staff from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed basically have brought you to this document. This is a beginning stage in our joint work together. In the Department of Higher Ed, we've spent some time working since 2014 to fill out what is it we mean for higher ed, with the knowledge, the intellectual skills, the practical skills, and an understanding of the values that underlie social and political values that underlie democratic structures and practice. And the kinds of issues that you've just brought up are very much in the discussions we've had about how that needs to play out. Being able to take the perspective of others who are different from you and develop empathy across differences has been named as one of the intellectual and practical skills. So that's kind of embedded in that discussion and addresses the challenge of bringing together people across diversity. The question of stewardship, I really like that notion, and I think we could be more explicit because people who act as citizens are stewards of a tradition of shared governance, stewards of a tradition of working together toward the common good. And that's something that could be highlighted as we move forward.
Let me try. Do you want to follow? No? Okay. Let me take one more comment from Member Toner, and then I think we should move to second.
I was trying to point out behind it.
Oh, thank you.
You need to look to the left. Yeah.
You're hiding behind. You're hiding behind Member Morton there. So go ahead.
First, I appreciate I'm very committed to this issue. I mean, I think I pointed out that I think unless we pay attention to this, we're going to have nobody voting in the future. But as we say, 18% of 17 to 24-year-olds vote today. So it's very timely. It's interesting. When I looked at the term plan strategically for civic change, what I thought about was referendums, legislation, town meetings. It's interesting because you have to know about those things because change is constant. And in order to be involved, you have to think strategically about how you create change within the system. It's not like, okay, let's change the world. I mean, that's how you create change. And you have to strategically, if you want to create change, you have to understand it. You have to be strategic about it. So it's interesting that people have different views of what strategic change. And the other piece of it is that, you know, our job as educators is to create participants and leaders. And we want people to understand how to take a leadership position or an active participant position. And the Secretary's comment about U.S. history, my also interpretation was core civic content. To me, I don't know how you have that without understanding the basics of our government and its foundation. It's difficult to exhibit knowledge and work on it, work and participate without understanding the core basics. So I support this document, long overdue. You know, back in the day, this was what education was about, and I hope, and I know all the work that's been done, so I would hope we don't try to wordsmith it, and we go ahead with it.
I want to just make a brief comment about the way in which civic readiness reinforces both career preparation and academic development, because there's a very good body of work that does say that application of what you learn in the classroom is the best way to really test theory in practice. And I would also say these skills do reinforce what employers are asking, which is not my So I think that this makes a really good package of skills, and I hope that we can really move forward with this to see young people completing post-secondary and high school as active citizens. Seems something that we really need urgently at this point in our nation's history and in terms of the world situation.
So my comments will be quick. That I endorse this document, but I'm curious about how much input that millennials had into the creation of this document, because what's happening now in the workforce is they are really reshaping what the first workforce looks like and what the values are and what they perceive as workplace etiquette, to the degree that human resource organizations are having to redesign how corporations operate today in their career path. And so I think if we haven't sought that particular perspective, it would be helpful to do so, because we might be surprised about how it really is also reshaping civic engagement in terms of technology and how millennials are actually engaging in civic activity. So I think that's an important perspective to hold.
Did you want to respond to that briefly?
Briefly.
I think there was a question in there.
Yes, okay. To my knowledge, there has not been a high level of participation to this point in the creation of this document by millennials. I think it's been the board, the two boards each established study groups, which were professionals coming together to think about what might need to be done and how it would be framed. I think if the boards adopt this revised language, it then provides a framework for us to move forward and engage young people in thinking about how do we make this happen. And so I think the opportunity needs to be seized for engaging young people in taking these very general ideas and bringing them into implementation.
So let me cold call a member Williard for a second, because at the elementary and secondary board, we received a great deal of input on this topic, and it was informed very much by students as part of that advisory work, and I think they were very articulate about the need for us to focus on civic education. Donald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my tardiness. Had some issues with the parking, but we figured it out. I'd like to thank the honorable member to my right for bringing up a very valid point, which is making sure that students had a voice in the policy and in the document. And I want to say very, very proudly, yes, we did. At least on the EFC side of things, the stakeholder group, or the civic group, reached out to several stakeholder groups, including the SAC, which we were very communicative with that group. So a lot of what you see was formed with student opinion. So thank you for bringing that up, and I hope that alleviates some of the concern there on that end.
All right, so one of the fun parts of my job is playing the clock monster. So I'm going to move us along. What I would say is we don't take joint votes of the two boards. The two boards individually have to come back to this and decide to adopt or not. I think I heard pretty strong support for this. I think I heard a suggestion from the Secretary of 2 possible additions. I think, I'll speak for you, I think you were willing to accept Member Noyce's modification of foundational as opposed to founding documents. So a question of deep understanding and knowledge of U.S. history and its foundational documents, and the addition of language around freedom of speech and thought in the last bullet. Taking those 2 suggestions, I think I would recommend that the 2 boards should in their own schedule pick these 2 up and decide if we want to adopt them. If there is some difference in language at the end of that, I guess we have a conference committee of some ad hoc nature that would have to wrestle that to the ground. I assume that'd be the secretary, the chairs, and the commissioners, and either be authorized or have to come back to the boards if there was some nuance we didn't agree on. How about that? Okay? All right, thank you. So my suggestion is we go around again, and those who didn't have a chance to introduce themselves before do so, and we'll stop on the other chairman to pick up topic number 2. So, well, Donald, you sort of have to introduce yourself. So why don't you finish up?
Donald William, Chairman of the State Student Advisory Council, Revere. Catherine, say good morning, and Henry, and good morning to everybody. No,
Danny Monroe, Board of Higher Ed, and my apologies for being late. I guess I didn't read my minutes correctly.
Nancy Hoffman, I didn't read my parking directions.
Catherine Craven from Brookline, member of the board of DESE, and I have the same, I walked in with these ladies, so I know what the problem is.
Is everybody else introduced themselves?
Penny Noyce from Boston on the board of DSE, and my excuse is I live too close to here, so that's why.
Henry Thomas, Board of Higher Ed, and also representing the University of Massachusetts interest on the board.
And I can say that I know a member Fryer got stuck out of town on a canceled flight and is trying to red-eye here and will probably wander in at some point. And member Stewart had a personal appointment who will also be joining us a little late. Chris.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Sagan, for perhaps Vice Chair Harity for stepping in my tardiness.
I scared her. I told her she had to do the next topic.
Oh, well, I think we have to also address in the civic preparation being in the right place at the right time for the chair of the meeting, which I failed miserably. My apologies to all involved. The mistake was entirely my fault. The second item on the agenda is to discuss early college. Last March, we held a joint board meeting at Fitchburg State. Most of you were there. And at that time, the teams from the two departments and the commissioners put together an impressive spreadsheet that documented the many ways that the two departments collaborate to advance student success in Massachusetts. At the end of that meeting, Chair Sagan and I sort of pledged that to make sure that when we meet again in a year now, actually a little under a year, I believe that was in March, that we would try to add a little more focus and maybe some momentum to some top priorities for interactions across the fields of K-12, or what I now call lower ed and higher ed. Through subsequent discussions...
Wait a minute.
You're listening. Just checking. Through subsequent discussions, we chose to prioritize a look at the area of early college. The primary reasons we chose to select this specific area are first, and most importantly, I think it has the potential to squarely address a top priority for both segments, the post-secondary and long-term success of students, particularly first-gen college goers and disadvantaged and minority students. And second, that progress here might well require collaboration and even innovation across our two silos, since early college is both high school and college at the same time. In the time since then, we have worked to understand the opportunities and challenges here, and the staffs of the two departments have collaborated to define where Massachusetts already is, and it is home to quite a bit of work in this area, and might go. At today's meeting, we will get a presentation by our two commissioners on this, and then have time for open discussion among both boards' members. Following this meeting, it's our intention to incorporate that discussion into an effort that has been led by 5 of us, the 2 commissioners, the 2 board chairs, and Secretary Pizer, to ensure that Massachusetts explores and defines the most promising and strategic pathways available to drive high-quality, large-scale, effective, and efficient early college ahead over the years to come. Progress on that, which we'll talk about at the end of the meeting, will obviously require coming back to each of these boards separately. Certainly hope that by the time we reconvene in another year, we'll be able to talk about how we implement strategy in that direction. But for today, the goal is to get us on a common ground with regard to what the definitions are and where things stand, and to allow every member the chance to participate and provide input into the question of where we go from here. So with that, Unless you have a comment you want to add to that, Chair Sagan?
No, it's a very important topic. We've spent some time on it. We wanted to update the boards at this point, and then come back again with some more data and maybe then some proposals or ideas for consideration. And just again, because we can't see the screen, are you going to use this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So it's over to the commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an exciting initiative that we bring to you. There's been a lot of work by both agencies in the preparation of the materials. It is a bit long. The number of slides is significant, and both Commissioner Chester and I agree that we're going to go through this rather quickly. The purpose is to really explain what early college design is, how it's being implemented in part, both nationally and at the local level. Talk a little bit about concepts and models, and then really put out at the end some guiding questions that we hope will stimulate discussion moving forward. In terms of early, Mitch and I are tag teaming, so and it's not one slide after another going back and forth. So I'm going to.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. So last week we released the latest round of graduation rate data for the Commonwealth from high school graduation, and once again it was very positive news. Our graduation rate is up. And in releasing it, I made the observation, offered the observation that in today's world, a high school diploma is increasingly a minimum, but often insufficient credential. And that to have a shot at success after high school, pursuing a career that pays a livable wage that you can raise a family on, it's the rare individual that won't have to go on for additional training, additional education, whether it's career-focused, skill-focused, education or otherwise. And so there's no, in my view, the opportunities around early college, around students experiencing some success with college-level work before leaving high school is a tremendous opportunity and tremendous potential. So I'm glad that we're tackling this topic, and I know we've got members at the table here who have a tremendous experience in this. I know Margaret certainly does. I know that Nancy Hoffman does, and brings the skill, the world of work into the equation as well. Fernando and others around the table. I want to recognize Keith Westridge behind me, who heads our staff work in this area. But the first slide just gives you a quick overview. This is, again, designed to provide background on this. If you go to the third slide, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. I did. Oh, actually, I blew it. There we go. Essentially, early college encompasses a range of programs that allow students, before they're done with high school, to experience college-level work and hopefully experience success in college. And there are a number of existing programs. There are high schools that offer, most of our high schools, I don't know if there are any exceptions in Massachusetts, provide coursework that colleges will often recognize as representing college-level credit-worthy work, whether it's advanced placement courses, whether international baccalaureate or articulated courses. And then in addition, we have early college programs where students are actually enrolled in college-level coursework while simultaneously enrolled in high school, and we'll unpack a little bit of it as we go forward. So I'm going to turn it back to Commissioner Santiago.
Okay. My slide says Commissioner Chester speaks today. I'm more than happy. Let me just give some. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of visiting with the Board of Trustees of Bunker Hill Community College, and the way I've done my visits is I spend the entire day there. And the campus sets up the meetings in the course of the day. And one meeting was a very special meeting where I had two principals were there, high school principals, and a third one I had spoken to earlier. The principal of Malden High School, I had spoken to the principal of Chelsea, and the principal of Charleston High School was there. It was fascinating to listen to them talk about their early college programs. The first question I had was, so are you doing anything? And they all excitedly said, yes, we're all working with Bunker Hill. What was fascinating in the discussion is how different they were working with the community college. The focus in the high schools was different. For Malden, the students were more focused on taking credits around general education. For Charlestown, it was very concrete academic pathways that led to some employment prospects. So I think we're seeing more and more of this, and our dual enrollment program has helped support these activities. From my perspective, it's all about alignment. And I think Commissioner Chester and my predecessor, Commissioner Freeland, worked very hard at aligning the two agencies in their work, and this will continue, and I think it is truly the value of these early college design initiatives. So, having said that, there are clearly benefits to students, for a variety of students, for a variety of different reasons. In some cases, there are students who have little interaction with individuals that have gone to college, first-generation students. This provides an opportunity for a student early on in their academic career to get a sense of what college life might be like, to get a sense of what a college course is like, to get a sense of their ability to traverse the higher education levels. It provides a lot of exposure. There are different models. Sometimes the teaching takes place on the high school campus. Sometimes it takes place on the college campus. Sometimes it's taught by college faculty. Sometimes it's taught by high school faculty with college faculty. And one of the things I heard yesterday was that the conversations that are occurring between high school teachers and college instructors is turning out to be very, very valuable. And some of those, the high school faculty, in fact, are now teaching in the community colleges as well. And I think that these linkages are hugely important. The data suggests that overall, these are very successful programs. They tend to increase or be related to increased high school graduation, increased enrollment in college, and persistence in college. And those are things that I think across our two agencies are very important to promote. So we know that there are some clear benefits on a broader level to these initiatives. Next slide shows just a sense of how these programs can be structured. One approach is simply, as we do with dual enrollment, where, in some cases, one student is given an opportunity to take one course, all the way to the more extensive linkages with industry, which we have not developed to the extent that we simply open up our dual enrollment program to give students an opportunity. And I think one of the issues for the two boards to think about and to talk about as we move forward is to what extent, what kind of model would we like to see play out, knowing that there are a variety of approaches that are taking place across the Commonwealth. The next slide shows that depending upon the number of credits that are gained in high school, there are models that actually have students completing an associate's degree. While I think one of the principals yesterday said there was a student who on Friday graduated from high school and on Saturday got an associate's degree. The ability to move very quickly through the academic pipeline is very important as well. And it really is dependent upon support funding and our ability to have students take more credits earlier on as we go forward. In Massachusetts, we have a number of models, and the next slide looks at some of these, starting from the dual enrollment partnership program, which, as was mentioned by Chair Gabrielli, most of our high schools and institutions of higher education are participating in to some extent. The programs are rather varied. I think one of the things that we have in the department, and I'm sure in elementary, secondary education, have been, I'm not going to say concerned, but certainly we want to see more closely how these dual enrollment programs are moving forward. Are they succeeding? Do we have metrics to determine the success of students? Are there other models that we can use to build upon the framework that dual enrollment provides? And clearly there's a continuum of different types of models. The early college high schools is focused on STEM, or another model that also is playing out with fewer examples, but I think we're going to see an increased movement in this direction as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight one of the programs in Massachusetts that I think is quite exemplary is in Marlborough. Marlborough has a STEM early college program, and I know that Jobs for the Future has been very influential. Pathways Project in helping to get that launched. It includes a STEM-focused program in middle grades to prepare students for advanced work when they hit high school. It includes a dual enrollment in college courses in grades 11 and 12 in a partnership with Framingham State University. Courses are available in 5 different STEM pathways. One of the pieces that, and it includes employers in the program, so that employers come to the school and with this, we're focused in these STEM areas, spend time in the school with students. Students visit the workplace, so there's a real career awareness, career engagement component to the program. One of the things that I found really neat about the program is it's not aimed at the top students, the top academic students in the school. In fact, it was aimed at the middle tier of students. And I visited it. It's very impressive to watch that program approach a pathway that's STEM focused, that aligns to college, that gives students successful experiences before they leave high school. It's very neat.
I would also add that there is considerable interest at the national level. I think we are seeing the federal government put a proposal out for participation to use Pell Grants to support these kinds of initiatives, and a number of our institutions have been in conversations about applying for those programs. The IBM has the P-TECH program, which I think some of you are familiar with, and we're looking at that quite closely. Maura Pant, I believe, was very much involved, a former board member, was very much involved with those programs as well. There are programs emerging in North Carolina that are also worth looking at, and we've got our staff getting a sense of how those programs are playing out as well. So there are different models, but I think that the point is that there is a lot of national interest in these initiatives as well. As you know, one of the real concerns for the Department of Higher Education is, in fact, finding sufficiently trained workers to meet the demands of the knowledge-based economy in Massachusetts. That is something that we've been looking at for a few years now, with the decline in the traditional age high school to college-going population. Right now, some of the data that the state is looking at, as well as national data and data from Georgetown University's research center, suggests that in Massachusetts, 80% of the jobs now that are opening are requiring a baccalaureate degree and higher. And we know from the data that we've looked at that bringing in underserved populations and closing gaps is important. But the data also suggests that it's not sufficient. That even if we were to close gaps, in terms of high school graduation, college participation, college success, we still would not be able to achieve the numbers of workforce members with these higher education degrees. We need to continue to do that. We need to focus on the urban centers. We need to focus on students that have not participated in higher education at the numbers that we would have liked. But we also need to work, I believe, through these early college design programs to get more students to be successful as they go through the pipeline, the educational pipeline. The Board of Higher Education later this afternoon will be speaking about and moving forward, hopefully moving forward some initiatives in two very important areas that I think relate to this. One is developmental education. We need to make that less of an obstacle. We need to, and we have some initiatives and some proposals to move that forward. Transfer. I've said it publicly a number of times that in our system of public higher education, we have 2,600 separate and distinct articulation agreements for 28 campuses. To navigate that really is very difficult for students to do, and we need to streamline that. We need to make a unified system. We need to ensure, as these early college programs are developed, that credits taken at a high school with a community college can be transferable, both for that student's completion as well as transferable across the system of institutions. So there is a lot of background work that needs to be done to ensure that those early college programs are successful, and any obstacles that we put forward that currently exist must be reduced. So there are a series of questions that we think, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but there are questions that may stimulate some discussion among the boards. I will go through them very quickly and then simply turn it back to Mitch if he has any final comments as well. One question is, what are the metrics by which we should measure success and program outcomes? What modes of program design will we pursue, and what are the implications? What types of students are we going to serve? How will funding and sustainability of programs be ensured, and who will be accountable for the success of this work? I think this is important. This is, I think Massachusetts, once again, is at the forefront of aligning K through 12 and higher education. I think there will be a lot of interest in the progress in these areas. I know a lot of board members have opinions about this work and are very supportive of our moving forward in this direction.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of thoughts. For me, to develop a coherent state policy in this area, which I think is a great direction to be headed in, a core question is toward what end? And I have some experience with this, having been in Ohio before coming to Massachusetts. That was a question that the state could never quite get its arms around. And as a result, early college never gelled as a coherent state policy. There wasn't clarity about what are we trying to accomplish with this program, because you could think of many different ideas here. Virginia at one point in time wanted every student in the state to experience at least a semester of college credits before they graduated high school. The end there was that every student would have a leg up and would save tuition costs for their families before they graduated high school. I think a strong case can be made for focusing on first-generation college goers and encouraging students who come from families where college has not been part of the future should be a focus of the program. But it's toward what end, I think that's a core question here. The other observation I'd make is often in these discussions there's an assumption that early college is about our two-year institutions working with our high schools. And I think it's critical for our two-year institutions to be part of the formula, but they don't have to exclusively be part of that. And I think our four-year institutions as well should be part of the early college programs. One of the most effective early college programs I've seen is a school in Columbus, Ohio, which is physically sits on the edge the Ohio State University campus, and it's called the Metro School. Half of the enrollment comes from Columbus School District. The other half comes from 6 or 8 surrounding towns. The seats are proportional. I believe admission is by lottery, but you'd have to check my memory on that. And the goal there is that students will experience college-level coursework at Ohio State University and will matriculate at Ohio State University before they finish their high school work. And the school's been incredibly successful in that regard. So I encourage us, as we go forward with this discussion, to tackle the question, toward what purpose, for what end are we pursuing this, and to think broadly, not just about two-year colleges. Great. I'll start.
Thank you very much
Reimers.
for a very enlightening and useful presentation on a topic that could not be more urgent to a state that depends on an innovation and on a knowledge economy. My only hope is that as we move with deliberate speed in defining what models, we seize these as an opportunity to unleash all the innovation that is possible so that we can serve as many high school students as possible with the opportunity to take college courses. And as I listened to the presentation, it seemed to me that it was wedded to a model that depended very much on colleges, both offering the education as well as grading students' work. And I think that business model is inherently limited. Let me give an example of a field in which we need a lot of talent, computer science. Our colleges do not have the capacity to serve even their own internal demand for computer science, let alone offer computer science opportunities in high schools, which sorely need those opportunities. It's not in the curriculum. But as we think about, we have some of the leading institutions in the world developing massive online courses in computer science. Some of them are very high quality. And so, just to take that as an example, if we could imagine a model to encourage disruption, the way in which Clayton Christensen uses the term, in allowing maybe partnerships with industry where people in industry would take on the work of grading student work and expanding the capacity of universities in that way. That's just one example of the kind of generation of multiple ways to do that. I think it would be a missed opportunity if we embrace this agenda, but then thought about ways to execute it that led to serving 3,000 high school students per year. And so I just would urge us to think expansively and disruptively, because I'm convinced that we need to move very, very fast in advancing the topics that you have raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? I can't hold the mic. I'm good. We can hear you. All right. I mean, to answer the question right there, what types of students should we be serving? I mean, ideally, all of them is my answer. I mean, and that's because college costs affect all students. The middle tier students, as the commissioner pointed out, also high tier students in academics, and the low tier students in academics. College costs are increasing across the board. And so with these early college programs, it offers students a significant discount to enroll in college credit-bearing courses to earn the degree faster. And I mean, I wrote down here a little kind of arrow diagram for me, and that's lower costs, increased credit enrollment, higher credit enrollment, decrease in number of classes to graduate, less classes to graduate, more money saved in the long run. It's, I mean, if Roland was here, I'm sure he would agree that that's a good economics point right there, in that we want to make sure that these are affordable to all students, not just offered or targeted, but across the board, all students can access this program, or these programs. So that's just one thing I want to make sure that we move forward with, is that the students in poverty, students in the middle class, have the same access, same equity to these types of programs.
Member Moriarty.
Thanks very much. Good morning. In preparing for the meeting, I looked at
The mic.
Am I not being heard? Is that better? Thank you. In preparing for today's meeting, I had looked at the booklet that had provided to us, the Massachusetts Landscape of Early College, and noted in particular a chart that appeared on page 3, which shows that from the 2007 cohort of 9th grade students, at this point, only 35 of all of them have earned post-high school credentialing. And among students who were identified as low income at that time, only 15%. So I guess in the conversation about toward what end, it's about getting that result improved. And I do think that this is a model that can be successful in making that happen, that can increase resiliency in college and increase the capacity to pay for it. Since actually, if you do well in your MPs now and get to the right school, you can save a bundle. Right? However, I think part of the conversation that is actually on topic with this is taking a hard look at our early literacy crisis in Massachusetts. Because what students will we serve? Everybody but them. And I took a look at this same 2007 cohort, and our state 3rd grade reading MCAS, which they taught, was 62%, which is roughly where we are now. And I would fully expect, if you go district by district, in this state, which actually has a world-class elementary and secondary education system and is considered one of the best in the country, you won't see much change on a district by district level very much either. So that needs to be addressed forcefully and in tandem with this, or the same kids that are being excluded now will continue to be excluded. They will be poor, they will be disproportionately of color, they will be disproportionately special education skills. And I think a particular rule for the higher education community that's here is that by and large, yours is the system that is training our teachers that can change this outcome for our youngest students. And I don't see a lot of movement for change in the manner of instruction, in the rigor in which these schools accept students and put them out. And I think that gets reflected somewhat in the very profound achievement gaps that we experience in this state. So on the higher end, if that were being addressed forcefully, you will have more kids engaged with whatever well-designed early college opportunities you create, and ultimately, I would hope, a much larger cohort that is ultimately receiving these degrees. And I think that should be the end to which we're working.
I want to make sure we do try to get all the way around the table for all of the comments, and I say that only because I see a couple members over there, but what I think we'll do is just try to keep going this way, if you don't mind. I think it's sort of easy to track.
No, I was just pointing to Penny on down there and Paul.
Why don't I, Nancy, in many ways, Member Hoffman is one of our resident experts, so I'm going to leave you near to the end, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm happy to listen.
Yeah, great. Any comments on this side? Member Morton. Vice Chair Morton, excuse me.
Thank you, Chair Gabrielli. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who has participated in this work. I have firsthand experience as a former teacher of students who participated in dual enrollment classes. I have a spouse who participated in the middle college program at Holyoke Community College, where the students that her school served were students who had the greatest academic challenges, but found themselves on a community college campus and excelled. College was demystified for those students, and they found themselves in an environment where they felt like they were in college, and it meant a lot to them, and ultimately I think it meant a lot to their success. So I believe very deeply about the absolutely transformative impact that programs like this can have on young people, and encourage us to do everything that we can to develop this kind of continuity that Commissioner Mitchell spoke of, Chester spoke of. I want to make one additional comment and observation, and that is that in my mind, while I agree that we should serve all students, I think that we should make a significant effort to serve those students who have the greatest challenges. If we're going to make the kind of impact that Member Moriarty spoke of, then we have to have the focused intent to work with those youngsters who need this opportunity the most. And so I would encourage us to make sure that we pay attention to those students who are more academically challenged, and however, once finding themselves on a community college, might be able to make the greatest gains. And then I want to, ask a question. On page 3 of the materials that we received, there's a chart that said that early college students, 90% of them receive their high school diplomas, as compared to 78% of all students. The next category is a little puzzling, however, in that it says that students who enroll in college immediately in the fall, only 71% is reflected there, versus 68 for all students. I would have expected it to be a little higher. Any explanation for that? Thank you.
So this is national data that my organization has collected over a decade. And I think the explanation is early colleges nationally are serving a very at-risk, low-income population, and about 75% students of color. So students do take off a year. The other explanation, which you might not guess, is about a third of students who complete an early college program complete an associate's degree in high school. Particularly, Texas is really the sort of poster child for this along the Texas-Mexico border. So they are going into the labor market. So that's the best explanation I could give you.
I actually had a question for the commissioners, which is, how have you thought about the level of demand and scalability? And I was mostly referring to this bar chart, which I assumed on the vertical axis was absolute numbers, no missing zeros. And I wasn't sure if we should think about 5 years from now, call it 4,000 or 5,000 missing bachelors, an enormous number or an achievable gap to close. And am I reading that correctly? And do you think about this as a problem we're going to have to focus on solving at scale in a few places, or a little bit everywhere and we'll get over it from a labor point of view?
This is something that we looked at for quite a bit last year. The Vision Project report, Degrees of Urgency, really spoke to it. And we are lagging in terms of our ability to close those gaps. And we focused on specific areas. For example, I'll just use one that's often cited as nursing, where there is an acute shortage of bachelor's degree trained nurses. And the Academic Affairs Committee has put out reports on this. We've moved some initiatives forward, but our sense is that we're not quite at pace where we need to be to fill those gaps. And I think you see that in some of the other areas as well. Computer science, IT, I mean, there are a number of areas where there is some progress, but I think in answer to your question, the gaps are a bit daunting at this point.
Member Noyce.
I want to speak again to some of these questions. What types of students are we going to serve? I respect what Member Williard said about all students could benefit from this, but I really agree with Member Morton that in terms of a policy push from the state, we should focus on first-time college attendees and students of low income. We know that students in the lowest quintile of income with high scores are less likely to complete college than students in the highest level, the highest quintile of income and low scores. What's stopping students is often a number of things, including their lack of familiarity with the college process, financial problems, family problems, social issues that come up. And I think we need to do as much as we can to try and make college as familiar to low-income students as it is to high-income students. I think that the idea of the letting 1,000 flowers bloom in terms of MOOCs, massive online courses, for example, those could be very easily geared to students who can pay a small fee to do it, who have support at home to make sure that they keep up with their online course, etc. And those could be available to everyone. But I think the sort of more almost residential programs where kids have a chance to go to college, where they're going to a regular course, where they're having a chance to interact with employers, we should definitely try to focus those on our neediest students, the students that are least likely to complete college, and the population with which we will see the greatest jump in college completion as a result of our efforts. The metrics by which we should measure success in program outcomes, I think, include the things that have been mentioned: high school graduation, credits achieved, decreased in requirements for remediation, degrees earned. And then in terms of what kinds of programming we should really devote state funding to, I think we should really look at core programming that is either designed to reduce remediation, so fundamental, the first college course in reading, the first college course in mathematics, and courses of study that lead to high-need job, sectors. Because that's the way I think that we'll see the greatest impact from our investment and the greatest likelihood that any state investment will continue. I think the question of who will be accountable for the success of this work is key, because it's a little funny. It falls really right smack between our two boards. So are both boards accountable? Do we create some sort of committee of the two boards that oversees this work? I think we should all be accountable for the success, but you don't want to confuse that, and I look forward to hearing your ideas about that. Thank you.
Member Thomas.
Yes, on the question of sustainability, I was interested in knowing whether there have been any modeling of cost implications at various scale levels.
Let me just comment on that. I think that's one of the reasons this work needs to be done, because it depends entirely on the assumptions. Whether you're paying literally twice for the same student fully, whether there's any cost efficiency by that being one track. And that's part of what I think has, I hope I'm not stepping on your lines when I say that. So can I take that as a comment rather than a question, just so we can also get to the, but that's, I think, a crucial part of the assessment that to bring back to either board or both boards. Member Doherty.
I think it's a great idea to help transition kids from high school into college, whether it's helping them with a little bit of their tuition or just demystifying college and lessening the anxiety. But if we go back 15 or 20 years, we've heard an awful lot about school to work and school to career. And I don't see an awful lot of reference in the early college transition to either the business community or to employers. Now, is there a dichotomy? Does a student in high school decide they want to go the school to work, school to career track, or the early college track? Or is there a way of merging these two so that the business community, the employers, also have a role in transitioning high school students into the next phase of their lives?
Member Toner?
So this actually goes back to Commissioner Chester's comments about having vision. I know we have the vision project and we have a number of policy papers that we've all written. And this may be somewhat controversial among some of you who know this line of study far better than I do, but I'm going to bring up our trip to Singapore that some of us went on earlier this year. And I know there's a lot about Singapore that maybe we would have issue with, but in the 4 or 5 days I got to spend with Professor Reimers and Nate McKinnon and a group of 15 others in teacher prep and foundation world in Singapore, along with folks from Texas and Colorado that were also there. We actually went there, Board Member Moriarty, to look at teacher preparation and what we could and should be doing here in Massachusetts to have our teachers not only teach content, but also teach a vision for the future and skills and leadership. But one of the things I left with, I got a real economics lesson. I think the number, and correct me, Professor Reimers, but the number was minus 2% unemployment not that long ago, and they treat every child as a precious resource. They can't afford to waste one child. Now, their system is something that I think looks good on paper for us, but and it's very nimble and flexible and responsive to the business needs. It's probably a little bit too top-down planning for Massachusetts or the United States, but there must be some middle ground where we can truly come up with a comprehensive system that doesn't require coming up with patchwork piecemeal programs in these different schools. So I'm hoping that whatever vision we come up with, and I hope it's not 40 or 50 years, because Singapore managed to do it in 40 years themselves, going from 0 to 100. How can we get to those types of outcomes without a completely top-down set of programs?
So we have like 90 seconds till we have to adjourn, which may mean you get squeezed, but Member LaRock, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the departments to perhaps come up with some models that can guide institutions and schools that are interested in doing this to work through some of these questions around cost sharing, because that, to me, is a real big barrier in terms of scaling up. I can tell you at North Shore Community College, one of the board chair just launched a really interesting and early college partnership with the City of Lynn, where the demand is through the roof. But it took a year and a half to put all the financial pieces and the logistical pieces in place. I think we would be well served, in the interest of scaling up, to give some assistance to institutions along those lines.
Nancy, can you give us a send away and then we'll adjourn?
I was actually going to give respond or amplify what Member Doherty had to say. I think we need to approach this conversation thinking that everyone goes to post-secondary to get a career, whether you're getting a PhD or a certification in automotive. So one of the things Massachusetts has done well is, as best we can, as the English language permits, is try not to make a bifurcation between career education and academic education. So as we think about early college, whether students start in a community college with a career focus or with general education with the intent to transfer, at some point they're going to need to connect with employers, to think about the work world, to get work experience if they're lucky. And one of the things that we're seeing is young people who are low income go to community college in an early college program. They then go to work and find an employer who will pay tuition benefits so they can go on if they want to, and they're highly employable, and they're terrific students because they've had experience in the workplace. So I think we need to think about this not as career. I mean, one of the mistakes of the school to work transition was that I think we got ourselves in a box of you're either going to work after high school or going to college, and we know that there are many permutations, and we ought to think about these as coherent opportunities with many off and on ramps.
Secretary Pizer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank both the commissioners and both the chairs for their leadership and their engagement on this issue. I think this is tremendously promising. It is, in many respects, exactly the kind of work that we can and should be doing collectively. It is very much at the intersection, obviously, of our two domains. And so this is, I think, very productive and important work that we're engaged in this morning. I want to build on what Nancy and actually what Ed said also by reiterating an announcement that the governor made last week when he announced his intention in his budget, which will be introduced tomorrow, to double the size of the dual enrollment program by, in particular, adding $1 million that would support the development of early college pathways, in particular with a STEM focus, which include career-oriented courses, very much to your point, developed by and supported directly by local businesses, complemented by internships and other workplace learning opportunities, and capped off by college-level courses. The one thing I'll note here is that in thinking about, and we've talked about scalability and affordability and funding sources, we are operating in a situation where even with a significant increase, these are still small dollars, where we're, I think, very much in the phase of trying to identify what the highest leverage models are, what the financial models are to support them, to make them truly scalable. And in that context, I think we need to be focused as much as we possibly can on sort of this fuller integration between high school and college, as opposed to the more, for lack of a better word, kind of cafeteria style of dual enrollment, whereby students are given access to college courses or to college credits through a variety of sort of independent means, whether it's AP courses or courses taught on college campuses or courses taught by college faculty in high schools. All of those are good things. But I think in terms of the work that we need to do now is we need to try to focus on how to build those models that are more integrated early college pathways that connect young people from 9th grade, if not earlier, as we heard about in Marlboro, to programs of study and workplace learning experiences that will get them from where they are to where they need to be, not just so they can get access to college credits and make college more affordable, which is extremely important, but also put them on a path to successful careers.
Thank you. So that's been a great dialogue. It's been great to get so many voices into this sort of working group of the 5 of us, the 2 commissioners, the 2 board chairs, and secretary. We're going to meet soon to explore how to best go forward from here. It's our goal and our intention to work with the department staffs, the campuses and districts, the experts and many stakeholders, including the students and communities and employers, to define the most promising strategic alternatives for Massachusetts to accelerate the growth of these high-quality, large-scale early college work, and to bring that back to these boards. We hesitate to name a schedule yet, but we aim to advance this meaningfully during this calendar year. So on that note, I think we should move to adjourn.
I think so. I just want to thank the members of both boards for giving some time to work together to try to fill this gap that has been identified as potentially between our areas and not wanting to just ignore it, but to work on it.
I really appreciate that point. I mean, I think students and families imagine somebody, if they think about it, imagine somebody somewhere is responsible for solving these things, and if that's not us, I don't know who it is. So, motion to adjourn. We do these separately? Is that how we're going to do this?
I think we're just done. Yeah. Adjourn.
Roughly speaking, if anyone disagrees, otherwise we're adjourned.
And everyone has to re-adjourn, and you know where, I think.
Thank you very much.